Speech tonight, capping off the celebrations for America's 250th birthday, with questions over whether he'll turn it into a campaign rally. Gabe Gutierrez joins us now live. And Gabe, you have new reporting on what the president will say?
Yeah, that's right, Tom. We've seen several military flyovers already, and we really expect the president to tout American exceptionalism. A senior White House official telling me that this is expected to be a speech unlike any that he's ever given, that'll look back at America's 250-year history since its founding and reference the stories of American heroes to help tell it. But Tom, as you know, is not, and is often the case with President Trump.
Welcome to State Line Media. Let's get started. A sweeping congressional investigation has leveled serious accusations against Donald Trump, claiming that he has fundamentally transformed the United States' 250th anniversary celebrations into something far removed from their original purpose. Instead of serving as a moment of unified national reflection, investigators say the commemoration has been repurposed into a vehicle for political campaigning, aggressive fundraising, and the promotion of a specific ideological worldview.
Raising alarm over the nation's 250th anniversary festivities, accusing President Trump of hijacking the celebration to serve himself, going so far as to allege corruption and possible fraud. The report is titled "From Vanity to Insanity: How the White House Cheated the American People Out of Their 250th Birthday."
Long investigation that really, I think, should upset every American, because our country only turns 250 years old once. We were on track for a broadly unifying national celebration with serious folks like the Smithsonian leading the programming. Congress set up this commission to be insulated from politics, to really be above politics.
How the White House cheated the American people out of their 250th birthday. This document was compiled and released by staff working under the House Natural Resources Committee's Oversight and Investigations Subcommittee, a body tasked with scrutinizing exactly these kinds of governmental actions. Within its pages, the report lays out a comprehensive set of allegations touching on financial misconduct, troubling conflicts of interest, and what investigators describe as the deliberate exploitation of public celebrations to further the president's far-right Christian nationalist political agenda.
All 50 states are gearing up to celebrate America's semi-quincentennial. Now, sure, we're still a few months from the 4th of July, but now might be a pretty good time to start planning your trip. Jen Sullivan highlights the nation's big celebrations and also where you can travel.
From sea to shining sea, communities across the country are planning celebrations to mark the 250th anniversary of the adoption of the Declaration of Independence.
This is a historic milestone for our country.
Rosie Rios is the chair of the America 250 organization.
At the very center of this investigation lies a critical claim that the White House deliberately pushed aside the America 250 Foundation, an organization that Congress itself had established back in 2016 specifically to coordinate the nation's semi-quincentennial celebrations in a fair, nonpartisan manner. The report suggests that administration officials grew increasingly frustrated with the foundation's insistence on independence, and rather than working within that framework, they sought to seize greater control over how the historic anniversary would be planned and executed.
The president also targeted musical acts who have pulled out of Freedom 250 celebrations, calling them overpriced singers and floating a MAGA rally as a replacement, even though Interior Secretary Doug Burgum insisted the events would be politically neutral.
Some musicians want to play music for everybody, and some musicians seem to have segmented their audiences.
When the America 250 Foundation pushed back against efforts to reshape its programming according to the administration's wishes, investigators allege that the Trump regime simply pivoted to an entirely different vehicle, a newly formed organization called Freedom 250. According to the report's findings, this new entity was deliberately structured as a subsidiary of the National Park Foundation, a maneuver that allowed it to piggyback on that foundation's well-established and respected public reputation. Yet despite this borrowed credibility, Freedom 250 has been able to operate with dramatically less public oversight than would typically be expected of a government agency handling matters of this scale.
And it was going to be a lot like what many of us experienced in 1976, something that we could all feel good about our government leading. Instead, Donald Trump hijacked it, made it all about himself and his vanity projects, his political agenda, and all of these endless schemes to enrich himself and his cronies.
Representative Jared Huffman of California did not mince words when characterizing what he sees as an unprecedented takeover. In his view, an organization that has historically dedicated itself to supporting and preserving America's national parks has been twisted into something else entirely, a political tool crafted specifically to promote Donald Trump personally while simultaneously rewarding those loyal to him. This transformation, according to Huffman, represents a significant departure from the organization's founding mission and a troubling precedent for how such institutions might be used going forward. A substantial portion of the report's findings zero in on allegations tied to fundraising practices.
This report pulls back the veil on how they hid a lot of this from public scrutiny. And they started out with an attempt to take over that bipartisan commission that Congress created. When that failed, they went to Plan B, which is this elaborate machination where they set up a shadow company, Freedom 250 LLC. They housed it within a beloved charity, the National Park Foundation, over at the Department of Interior. And they did it in a way that all of their fundraising and other activities would be insulated from public view.
Investigators describe a situation in which Freedom 250 found itself competing directly against America 250 for the same pool of financial donors, a dynamic that inevitably created widespread confusion among people trying to determine which organization they were actually supporting. Perhaps most troubling, the report alleges that certain fundraising representatives handed prospective donors banking information belonging to Freedom 250, even when those donors genuinely believed their contributions were headed toward America 250. Given the seriousness of these claims, investigators have suggested that such conduct may warrant closer examination under existing federal fraud statutes, though it's important to note that no formal criminal findings have been established at this point in the process. Beyond fundraising confusion, the report also raises significant concerns regarding sponsorship arrangements connected to various anniversary events. Investigators found that corporations were presented with sponsorship packages of escalating price points, each tier offering progressively greater access to Donald Trump himself. At the very top of these packages, sponsors could apparently secure opportunities for exclusive personal photographs with the president. This tiered system, according to investigators, effectively blurs any meaningful distinction between genuinely supporting a national civic celebration and simply purchasing direct access to the White House and its most powerful occupant. The investigation extends further to examine how numerous public events tied to the anniversary allegedly became entangled with partisan political activity in ways that many participants say they never anticipated. One particularly telling example centers on the launch of the Great American State Fair. According to the report's findings, several performers agreed to take part after being assured that the event would function as a nonpartisan celebration of the nation as a whole. However, once promotional materials began circulating and revealed just how closely the event was tied to Donald Trump personally, a number of these artists expressed genuine frustration. Many said they had never been fully informed about the political dimensions of the event beforehand, and as a direct result, several chose to withdraw their participation entirely. The report also devotes considerable attention to scrutinizing a large-scale Ultimate Fighting Championship event that was hosted directly on the White House South Lawn back in June, framed as part of the broader anniversary festivities. Investigators argue that staging an event of this magnitude required the deployment of extensive government resources that ultimately ended up benefiting private commercial interests with direct connections to the president himself. Adding another layer of complexity, the report notes that fighters participating in the event received bonuses paid out through a cryptocurrency tied to a financial venture operated by members of the Trump family. Compounding matters further, Donald Trump himself had previously made personal investments in the UFC's parent company. Taken together, investigators suggest these overlapping financial relationships raise serious and legitimate questions about potential conflicts of interest at the highest levels. Government contracting practices represent yet another major focus within the report's extensive findings. Investigators allege that Freedom 250 has been directing substantial federal contracts toward companies that maintain well-documented ties to Trump's broader political operation. Among the firms specifically named is Event Strategies, a company with a history of organizing events connected to Trump's various political campaigns, including notably the rally that took place immediately before the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. According to the report's calculations, this single company has already received contracts worth tens of millions of dollars tied specifically to anniversary-related events, with additional long-term contracting opportunities on the horizon that could potentially be worth significantly more money over time. Investigators argue that these contract awards, taken as a whole, illustrate a much broader and more troubling pattern, one in which taxpayer-funded work is consistently steered toward firms with strong political connections rather than being awarded through more neutral, competitive processes. Yet perhaps the single most consequential set of allegations contained within the entire report involves the systematic collection of personal data. According to the report's detailed findings, individuals who registered for official anniversary events unknowingly ended up providing their personal information through systems that were directly linked to Republican political technology companies, rather than through neutral, government-operated platforms as one might reasonably expect. Investigators specifically identify the registration software in question as having been supplied by Campaign Nucleus, a company founded by Brad Parscale, who previously served as Trump's campaign manager and whose company specializes specifically in voter targeting and sophisticated political data analysis. The report goes on to explain that individuals attending entirely free public events, including FIFA World Cup fan activities that were organized as part of the broader anniversary celebrations, may have unknowingly contributed their personal information to databases specifically capable of supporting future Republican election campaigns. Democrats involved in the investigation argue that this arrangement effectively transformed what should have been purely civic, government-sponsored events into valuable opportunities for building out campaign infrastructure ahead of the midterms and beyond. Moving beyond these financial and political dimensions, the report also makes the case that the anniversary celebrations have undergone a profound ideological transformation over time. Rather than continuing to emphasize broad-based civic participation and the principles of constitutional democracy that one might expect from such a commemoration, investigators claim that Freedom 250 has increasingly gravitated toward promoting a distinctly Christian nationalist interpretation of American history. Among the specific initiatives singled out for criticism are the so-called Freedom Trucks, mobile museum exhibits that have been sent traveling to schools across the entire country. According to the report, educational materials featured within these exhibits were developed in close partnership with conservative organizations, including both PragerU and Hillsdale College, and these materials reportedly present the American founding as explicitly and exclusively Christian in nature, while simultaneously downplaying the country's actual religious diversity along with its secular constitutional traditions. Investigators go further still, identifying what they characterize as outright historical inaccuracies embedded within these traveling exhibits. Among the more striking examples cited are computer-generated presentations that depict George Washington making statements for which absolutely no historical evidence actually exists. Beyond this particular issue, the report also takes aim at educational displays that investigators argue oversimplify, or in some cases outright distort, the actual role that religious groups played during the American Revolution. Building on these concerns, investigators have also accused the administration of engaging in a broader effort to reshape how the public understands American history more generally. Specifically, references found within National Park Service sites addressing topics such as slavery, the forced displacement of indigenous peoples, and climate change have reportedly been either significantly reduced or removed altogether. Investigators frame this as part of a larger, coordinated effort to present a national narrative that is more celebratory in tone and considerably less complicated, effectively whitewashing history in order to better align with Donald Trump's preferred version of the American story. Ultimately, the report concludes that the alleged misuse surrounding America's 250th anniversary extends well beyond the current celebrations themselves, many of which, notably, have struggled with poor attendance. This is particularly true of the State Fair, which, according to the report, has seen literally only tens of visitors show up despite the significant resources invested in its promotion. Looking ahead, investigators have issued a clear warning, allowing future administrations to exploit publicly funded national commemorations for the purposes of political fundraising, campaign infrastructure building, and ideological messaging could establish a deeply concerning precedent, one that could go on to affect civic institutions for generations to come. While Democrats involved in the investigation readily acknowledge that many of the anniversary events are already well underway at this point, and therefore unlikely to be significantly altered before the celebrations eventually conclude, they nonetheless maintain that full public disclosure remains critically important. For the investigators behind this report, the ultimate goal extends well beyond simply documenting alleged misconduct surrounding the nation's 250th birthday celebrations. Rather, they hope to raise much broader and more enduring questions about transparency, political accountability, and where exactly the appropriate boundaries should lie between government institutions and partisan political activity. Nevertheless, taken together, the investigation strongly suggests that America's semi-quincentennial celebrations, originally intended purely to commemorate the nation's founding, have themselves become just another front in Donald Trump's broader effort to rewrite the history of America. An effort that investigators argue conveniently excludes the diverse work and collective effort of countless Americans that actually made the nation great in the first place. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more updates from Stateline Media. Thanks for watching.